Have you ever noticed how some people only seem powerful when they're standing in your shadow? They whisper, manipulate, and celebrate your setbacks, believing your energy is the fuel behind their game. But the moment you stop feeding the chaos, everything changes. Their carefully built illusion begins to crack, their confidence fades, and every move leads them into a dead end of their own making. The greatest revenge isn't retaliation, it's becoming untouchable. When you reclaim your focus, protect your peace, and refuse to participate in their darkness, you don't lose anything. They lose the only advantage they ever had, access to you. Most people believe that enemies gain power through influence, money, or numbers. The truth is often far simpler. Some people only appear powerful because they have learned how to draw strength from someone else's attention. They rely on your emotional reactions, your constant explanations, your frustration, and even your kindness to keep themselves relevant. Every argument you entertain, every insult you defend against, and every moment you spend trying to prove your worth becomes another investment in their illusion of control. What they never expected was that the very source of their confidence was never their own ability. It was the energy you unknowingly provided. There are individuals who carefully study patterns. They observe what excites you, what hurts you, and what makes you doubt yourself. They notice when you're vulnerable, when you're exhausted, and when you're searching for approval. Instead of building their own confidence, they become experts at disrupting yours. They understand that a distracted person rarely reaches their full potential, so they create confusion, spread negativity, encourage comparison, and wait patiently for you to become emotionally involved. The more attention you give them, the stronger they appear, even though that strength never truly belonged to them. Think about how much energy people waste trying to correct every misunderstanding. Every time someone judges you unfairly, the natural instinct is to defend yourself. Every false rumor makes you want to explain the truth. Every criticism makes you question your progress. Before long, your days become filled with responding instead of creating. You begin living according to other people's opinions instead of your own purpose. While you're busy fighting invisible battles, your dreams quietly wait in the background, neglected and postponed. This is exactly why protecting your energy becomes one of the greatest forms of personal power. Energy isn't only physical strength. It's your focus, your attention, your creativity, your emotional balance, and your ability to stay committed to what truly matters. Once someone gains access to those resources, they influence far more than your mood. They influence your decisions, your confidence, and even your future. The cost is often invisible until you realize how much time has disappeared chasing battles that never deserved your attention. The remarkable part is that many people who secretly oppose you aren't prepared for independence. They don't expect you to stop reacting. They assume you'll always answer the message, defend yourself, argue over every accusation, or become emotionally involved in every challenge they create. Their strategy depends on predictability. They expect you to behave exactly as you always have. But personal transformation begins the moment you become unpredictable. Instead of responding with anger, you choose peace. Instead of proving yourself, you let your actions speak. Instead of chasing validation, you become satisfied with your own progress. At first, this change may feel uncomfortable. Silence can seem like weakness when you've spent years believing every attack deserves a response. But silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is confidence refusing to perform for an audience that never intended to understand you. It communicates something powerful without saying a single word. It says your purpose matters more than their opinion. It says your future deserves more attention than their criticism. It says your peace has become too valuable to trade for temporary satisfaction. The people who depended on your reactions often become frustrated because they mistake your calmness for indifference. They begin trying harder to provoke you. The comments become louder. The manipulation becomes more obvious. The attempts to pull you back into old patterns become increasingly desperate. They cannot understand why the strategies that once worked so easily now seem completely ineffective. What has really changed isn't them, it's you. Your emotional boundaries have become stronger than their attempts to cross them. This shift creates something extraordinary inside you. Your mind becomes clearer because it is no longer occupied by unnecessary conflict. Your confidence grows because it is no longer measured by other people's approval. Your creativity expands because your attention is finally invested in your own goals instead of someone else's drama. The same energy that once fueled endless battles now fuels meaningful progress. Every hour previously spent defending yourself becomes another hour invested in building a life that speaks louder than any explanation ever could. People often underestimate how exhausting emotional conflict truly is. It quietly drains motivation, weakens discipline, and clouds judgment. When that burden disappears, life begins to feel different. Decisions become easier, opportunities become more visible, relationships become healthier because they are built on mutual respect instead of constant emotional tension. You begin recognizing that your greatest resource was never your talent alone. It was your ability to direct your energy intentionally without allowing unnecessary distractions to dictate where it flows. Those who secretly relied on your attention eventually discover an uncomfortable reality. Without your participation, their influence begins to shrink. The conversations they started lose momentum. The conflicts they created lose meaning. The control they imagined they possessed slowly disappears because it was never rooted in genuine strength. It was borrowed from the emotional investment you unknowingly continued to provide until you finally chose a different path. One of the most unexpected truths about personal power is that silence often accomplishes what endless words never can. Many people believe strength is measured by how quickly they respond, how fiercely they defend themselves, or how effectively they win every argument. But there comes a moment in every person's journey when they realize that not every battle deserves a warrior. Some conflicts exist for one purpose alone, to pull your attention away from your destiny. The greatest shift happens when you stop treating every provocation as an invitation and begin seeing it as a distraction. People who secretly work against you usually expect predictable reactions. They know exactly which words will irritate you, which situations will make you anxious, and which accusations will tempt you to prove yourself. Their confidence is built on familiarity. They count on your emotions following the same path every single time. They believe that if they push hard enough, you'll eventually react in the way they've already imagined. This expectation becomes the foundation of their strategy. But something remarkable happens when you refuse to play your assigned role. Instead of responding with anger, you remain composed. Instead of explaining yourself, you continue improving your life. Instead of chasing fairness from people committed to misunderstanding you, you invest your time in becoming stronger. And Shusay said this all the fsaming and padi others receive up sapana berispan shafau, swak pride, a de woldesai psusidicadation de salt ledu when nishad, swilons, has a way of exposing motives that arguments often hide. And someone genuinely wants understanding, respectful conversation is possible. But when someone only wants control, your silence becomes incredibly uncomfortable for them. They cannot manipulate a reaction that never arrives. They cannot continue a conflict that receives no participation. They cannot feed on emotions that are no longer available. What once seemed like confidence quickly begins to reveal itself as dependence. Many people misunderstand silence. They confuse it with fear, weakness, or surrender. In reality, meaningful silence often requires greater discipline than speaking. Anyone can react in the heat of the moment. It takes emotional maturity to pause, evaluate the situation, and decide that your peace is worth protecting. Choosing not to respond isn't about avoiding life. It's about refusing to waste valuable energy on conversations that were never intended to produce growth. Imagine carrying a bucket filled with clean water while others continuously throw dirt toward it. If you stop every few steps to argue with each person, the journey becomes exhausting. The water eventually spills and the destination remains far away. But if you continue walking without engaging every distraction, the dirt stays behind while your purpose moves forward. The people throwing the dirt become frustrated because they expected you to stop. Instead, your movement quietly defeats their intentions. There is also something deeply unsettling about calmness. People who expect emotional chaos often become confused when they encounter emotional stability. They may increase their efforts, believing they simply haven't tried hard enough. The criticism becomes sharper, the rumors become louder. The attempts to provoke you become increasingly obvious, yet every failed attempt teaches them the same lesson. The version of you they once controlled no longer exists. Your silence doesn't mean you don't notice what's happening. It means you've learned the difference between awareness and participation. You recognize manipulation without becoming trapped by it. You observe negativity without allowing it to define your emotional state. You acknowledge unfairness without permitting it to redirect your focus. This level of self-control creates freedom that no external approval can ever provide. As your reactions become more intentional, your confidence begins to change as well. It is no longer built on winning arguments or convincing critics. Instead, it grows from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, your self-respect increases. Every time you protect your peace, instead of defending your pride, your inner strength becomes more difficult to shake. Confidence stops depending on what others think because it is now supported by your own consistent actions. This transformation also changes the way opportunities appear in your life. Mental energy that was once consumed by unnecessary drama becomes available for creativity, learning, meaningful relationships, and personal goals. Your attention becomes sharper because it is no longer divided between your purpose and someone else's negativity. You begin noticing possibilities that were always there but hidden beneath emotional noise. Progress accelerates because your focus finally belongs to you again. Those who secretly opposed your growth often struggle to understand this change. They expected resistance, not resilience. They expected emotional reactions, not quiet confidence. They expected endless explanations, not unwavering consistency. The absence of your participation forces them into unfamiliar territory. Without your energy to sustain the conflict, they are left confronting the emptiness of their own intentions. What once appeared to be influence slowly fades because it depended entirely on your willingness to engage, and the moment you chose peace over reaction, the obstacle they never anticipated became the silence they could never overcome. There is a powerful principle that many people fail to recognize until much later in life. Every trap loses its power when you refuse to walk into it. Some individuals spend an incredible amount of time creating obstacles for others, believing they can control outcomes through manipulation, deception, or negativity. They carefully arrange situations designed to distract you, discourage you, or pull you away from your purpose. They expect frustration to slow your progress and emotional exhaustion to weaken your resolve. What they rarely consider is that the very traps they create can eventually become the walls that surround their own future. Negative intentions have a strange way of demanding constant maintenance. A lie requires another lie to protect it. Manipulation requires continuous manipulation to keep the illusion alive. Pretending to be someone you're not becomes exhausting because every conversation must support the false image you've created. The more energy someone invests in controlling others, the less energy remains for improving themselves. Without realizing it, they begin building a prison from their own decisions, one choice at a time. Meanwhile, you stand at a crossroads. One path invites you into endless conflict, encouraging you to chase every accusation, defend every misunderstanding, and fight every unnecessary battle. The other path asks for something much more difficult. It asks you to trust your purpose more than your emotions. It asks you to keep moving forward even when you feel misunderstood. It asks you to believe that your future is too valuable to sacrifice for temporary satisfaction. Choosing the second path doesn't guarantee an easy journey, but it does protect your direction. Many people become trapped because they mistake distraction for responsibility. They believe they must respond to every criticism immediately. They convince themselves that silence will somehow allow false opinions to win, but in reality there are moments when your continued progress becomes the strongest response you could ever offer. Success has a unique way of answering questions that words never could. Growth has a habit of exposing false narratives without requiring endless explanations. Imagine someone digging a deep hole, hoping another person will eventually fall into it. Day after day they continue digging, convinced that all their effort will eventually pay off. But while they remain focused on the hole, they stop paying attention to the road they're standing on. They lose sight of opportunities passing by. They become so committed to someone else's downfall that they unknowingly limit their own potential. Eventually, the hole they created becomes the obstacle blocking their own path forward. This pattern appears in everyday life more often than people realize. Individuals consumed by jealousy spend more time monitoring other people's progress than creating progress of their own. Those driven by resentment replay old disappointments instead of preparing for new opportunities. People obsessed with proving someone else wrong often forget to build a life that proves themselves right. Their attention becomes permanently attached to the very people they claim to dislike, and that misplaced focus quietly drains their ability to grow. The opposite mindset creates an entirely different future. Every moment you invest in learning a new skill, strengthening your discipline, or protecting your emotional well-being becomes another brick in the foundation of lasting success. You are no longer racing against critics. You are competing only with the version of yourself that existed yesterday. That shift changes everything because your progress no longer depends on what others choose to do. It depends only on the decisions you make consistently over time. There will always be moments when unfairness seems impossible to ignore. You may witness people spreading misinformation, attempting to damage your reputation, or celebrating temporary setbacks in your journey. The temptation to fight back can feel overwhelming. Yet wisdom often asks a different question. Instead of asking, how do I defeat them, it asks, how do I continue becoming the person I was meant to be? That question redirects your attention from revenge to purpose, from reaction to creation, from emotional conflict to meaningful action. As you continue moving forward, something unexpected begins to happen. The obstacles designed to stop you gradually lose their effectiveness because your identity is no longer connected to other people's opinions. Criticism becomes information instead of destruction. Rejection becomes redirection instead of defeat. Delays become opportunities to prepare rather than reasons to quit. What once felt like barriers slowly transform into stepping stones because your perspective has changed. Those who invested their time trying to block your path eventually discover that they have neglected their own. While you were developing patience, discipline, and resilience, they remained occupied maintaining unnecessary conflict. While you were building a future, they were protecting temporary victories that carried no lasting value. Every attempt to slow your progress quietly delayed their own, and every scheme they believed would trap you gradually narrowed the possibilities available to them. The greatest irony is that life often reflects our deepest habits. Those who repeatedly choose growth usually find new doors opening before them. Those who repeatedly choose bitterness often discover fewer and fewer paths remaining. A person who spends years creating obstacles for others eventually becomes surrounded by the consequences of those same decisions, until every direction they attempt to take leads back to the limitations they built with their own hands, leaving them standing before the very dead end they never imagined they were creating for themselves. Real transformation doesn't happen the day your circumstances change. It begins the day your mindset changes. There comes a point in every journey when you stop asking, how do I make people understand me? And start asking, how do I become so focused on my purpose that misunderstanding no longer controls my emotions? That single shift creates a version of you that cannot be easily manipulated, discouraged, or distracted. It isn't because the world suddenly becomes kinder, it's because your inner foundation becomes stronger than the opinions surrounding you. Many people spend years trying to gain control over external situations while ignoring the one area where true control is possible, their own thoughts, reactions, and decisions. As long as your confidence depends on applause, criticism will always have power over you. As long as your peace depends on everyone treating you fairly, disappointment will constantly interrupt your progress. But when your identity begins to grow from within, something extraordinary happens. External noise becomes background sound instead of your main focus. People who secretly tried to influence your emotions often depended on predictable patterns. They knew exactly how to make you doubt yourself. They understood which words could trigger insecurity, frustration, or anger. They expected your emotions to follow familiar routines because they had seen those reactions before. They believed that every challenge would pull you into the same cycle of defending yourself, explaining your choices, and seeking validation. What they failed to anticipate was your decision to evolve beyond those old habits. Growth changes more than your behavior. It changes your perspective. Situations that once felt like personal attacks begin to reveal themselves as reflections of other people's struggles rather than accurate descriptions of your worth. You stop carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with. Instead of absorbing every negative comment, you evaluate whether it contains genuine wisdom. If it helps you improve, you learn from it. If it exists only to discourage you, you leave it behind without allowing it to shape your identity. This level of emotional maturity isn't built overnight. It develops through repeated choices. Every time you resist the urge to react impulsively, your discipline becomes stronger. Every time you continue working despite criticism, your resilience increases. Every time you prioritize long-term purpose over short-term emotion, your character gains another layer of strength. Small decisions repeated consistently eventually create a completely different person. One of the greatest signs of growth is recognizing that your value does not increase because someone praises you, and it does not decrease because someone criticizes you. Your value exists independently of other people's opinions. This realization removes enormous pressure from your life. You no longer feel responsible for changing every mind or correcting every misunderstanding. Instead, you become responsible only for living with integrity, consistency, and purpose. As your mindset changes, your relationships also begin to change. People who genuinely support your growth become easier to recognize because they celebrate your progress without feeling threatened by it. Conversations become healthier because they are based on encouragement instead of competition. At the same time, those who depended on your insecurity begin to feel uncomfortable. They notice that old methods no longer produce familiar results. Attempts to provoke guilt, fear, or self-doubt suddenly lose their effectiveness because the emotional doors they once entered have quietly closed. This transformation also reshapes the way you approach challenges. Problems no longer appear as evidence that you're failing. Instead, they become opportunities to develop patience, creativity, and perseverance. Setbacks stop defining your identity because you understand they are temporary experiences rather than permanent labels. The energy once spent worrying about appearances is redirected toward genuine improvement. That shift creates momentum because growth becomes your priority instead of proving yourself. There is something incredibly powerful about becoming emotionally unavailable to negativity. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you become selective about what deserves your emotional investment. You understand that attention is one of your most valuable resources. Every minute spent replaying unnecessary conflict is a minute unavailable for learning, creating, loving, or building the future you desire. Protecting your attention becomes an act of self-respect rather than selfishness. People often underestimate how unsettling quiet confidence can be. Someone expecting to control your emotions becomes confused when they discover they no longer can. They may increase their efforts, hoping to provoke the version of you they once knew, but each failed attempt confirms the same reality. You are no longer operating from insecurity. You are operating from intention. Decisions are guided by values instead of impulses. Your direction is determined by purpose instead of pressure. The most inspiring part of this transformation is that it creates freedom. You wake each day focused on possibilities instead of distractions. Your motivation comes from the vision you're building rather than the opinions you're escaping. Success becomes deeply personal because it reflects your commitment to becoming better, not your desire to outperform someone else. The person who once questioned every step now walks with quiet certainty, and those who believed they could influence your future slowly realize that the greatest obstacle they face is not your resistance, but the undeniable reality that your continued growth has placed you completely beyond the reach of their control. One of the greatest investments you can ever make is learning to protect your energy. Most people think energy is simply about feeling rested or physically strong, but your energy is far more valuable than that. It is your attention, your mindset, your emotional balance, your creativity, and your ability to remain focused on what truly matters. Every achievement, every meaningful relationship, and every dream you pursue depends on where this energy is directed. Once you understand its value, you stop giving it away to situations and people that contribute nothing to your growth. There are countless distractions competing for your attention every single day. Some arrive in the form of criticism, others appear as unnecessary drama, endless comparison, or the pressure to constantly prove yourself. At first, these interruptions may seem small. You tell yourself that one argument won't matter, or that one emotional reaction is harmless. But over time, small distractions become habits, and habits quietly shape the direction of your life. Every minute spent feeding negativity is a minute taken away from building something meaningful. The remarkable thing about focused energy is that it creates momentum. Imagine sunlight spread across an entire field. It provides warmth, but its effect is limited. Now imagine that same light concentrated through a magnifying glass. Suddenly it becomes powerful enough to ignite a flame. Your attention works the same way. When it is scattered across worries, resentment, and unnecessary conflict, very little progress is made. But when it is concentrated on your goals, your discipline, and your personal growth, extraordinary change becomes possible. Many people unknowingly surrender this power because they allow other people's opinions to determine where their attention goes. A careless comment stays in their mind for days. An unfair accusation steals their peace. Someone else's jealousy interrupts their confidence. Instead of directing their own thoughts, they become passengers carried wherever external circumstances choose to take them. The danger isn't only emotional discomfort. The real danger is losing valuable time that can never be recovered. Protecting your energy requires intentional choices. It means recognizing that not every invitation deserves acceptance. Not every conversation deserves participation. Not every criticism deserves a response. Emotional maturity develops when you begin asking yourself a simple question before reacting. Will this matter a year from now? More often than not, the answer reveals that many conflicts are temporary distractions rather than lasting problems. This perspective allows you to respond with wisdom instead of impulse. As your focus becomes stronger, you begin noticing opportunities that were previously hidden beneath emotional noise. Your mind has room to think clearly. Creativity returns because it is no longer buried beneath constant stress. Decisions become easier because they are guided by purpose rather than frustration. You discover that peace is not the absence of challenges, but the ability to remain centered while challenges exist around you. This change also influences the people around you. Those who genuinely care about your success, appreciate your calmness, and respect your boundaries. They understand that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary for long-term growth. On the other hand, individuals who benefited from your emotional exhaustion may become uncomfortable. They notice that you are no longer easily distracted. Their attempts to pull you into a necessary conflict lose effectiveness because your priorities have changed. You no longer measure your value by winning arguments or gaining approval. You measure it by remaining faithful to your purpose. There is a quiet confidence that develops when you stop allowing every outside influence to control your inner world. You begin trusting your decisions without needing constant validation. You learn that discipline creates a stronger foundation than temporary motivation. Even on difficult days, you continue moving because your commitment is greater than your emotions. This consistency becomes one of your greatest strengths. While others constantly change direction according to circumstances, you continue progressing one deliberate step at a time. Protecting your energy also means becoming selective about what occupies your mind. Gratitude gradually replaces resentment. Curiosity replaces fear. Life your sighs, constant worry. These shifts may seem subtle, but they reshape the way you experience life. Challenges become lessons instead of permanent obstacles. Delays become preparation instead of punishment. Setbacks become opportunities to grow stronger rather than reasons to surrender. Your perspective transforms because your attention is focused on possibilities instead of limitations. Perhaps the greatest reward of protecting your energy is the freedom it creates. You no longer wake up wondering how to satisfy every expectation placed upon you. Instead, you wake up asking how to become a better version of yourself. Your progress becomes deeply personal. Every habit you strengthen, every goal you accomplish, and every obstacle you overcome reinforces the understanding that your greatest resource has always been the energy within you. Once you guard it wisely, invest it intentionally, and refuse to waste it on people determined to drain it, you discover that the life you continue building grows stronger with every step forward, while those who depended on your attention find themselves unable to move beyond the limitations created by their own misplaced focus. There comes a moment in every meaningful journey when you realize that the greatest victory is not proving someone else wrong, it is becoming someone they can no longer influence. Real success is not measured by how many arguments you win, how many critics you silence, or how many people finally admit they underestimated you. It is measured by the peace you protect, the purpose you pursue, and the person you become despite everything that tried to stop you. That is the kind of victory no one can take away because it is built from within, rather than borrowed from the opinions of others. Many people spend years chasing a moment that never arrives. They wait for an apology from those who hurt them. They hope the people who doubted them will suddenly recognize their value. They imagine that one day everyone who misunderstood them will finally admit they were wrong. While there is nothing wrong with wanting justice, making your happiness dependent on someone else's realization places your future in hands that were never meant to control it. Freedom begins the moment you stop waiting for permission to move forward. The truth is that not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people become uncomfortable when they can no longer define your identity by your past. They were familiar with the version of you that constantly explained, reacted, and sought approval. They understood how to influence that person, but they no longer recognize the individual who walks with quiet confidence, chooses peace over conflict, and refuses to abandon purpose for temporary emotional satisfaction. Your transformation challenges their expectations, and that discomfort belongs to them, not to you. One of the most powerful lessons in life is understanding that distance can be a form of wisdom. Walking away from negativity is not an act of defeat, it is often an act of courage. It takes strength to leave environments that continually drain your spirit. It takes discipline to stop returning to conversations that repeatedly damage your peace. It takes maturity to recognize that protecting your future sometimes requires separating yourself from patterns that keep pulling you backward. Imagine climbing a mountain while carrying a backpack filled with unnecessary stones. At first the weight may seem manageable, but as the climb becomes steeper, every extra burden makes progress more difficult. Eventually you realize that reaching the summit isn't about becoming stronger than the mountain. It is about becoming wise enough to let go of what never belonged in your backpack. Emotional burdens work the same way. Resentment, constant comparison, endless regret, and the need to prove yourself only make the journey heavier. Releasing them doesn't make you weaker, it allows you to move farther. As you continue growing, something beautiful begins to happen. Your confidence becomes quieter. You no longer feel the need to announce every victory or explain every decision. You understand that consistency speaks louder than promises. Character leaves a deeper impression than image. Your actions begin telling a story that words never could. The life you build becomes evidence of your transformation, and that evidence requires no defense. This quiet strength also changes the way you view success. Success is no longer about defeating another person. It becomes about honoring your potential. Every healthy habit you maintain, every challenge you overcome, and every act of discipline becomes proof that you are investing in a future worth creating. Instead of measuring progress against other people, you measure it against the person you were yesterday. That mindset removes jealousy from the equation and replaces it with continuous self-improvement. There will always be individuals who misunderstand your silence. They may assume you have forgotten, become weak, or accepted defeat. In reality, your silence simply reflects a different priority. You have chosen progress over revenge. You have chosen healing over bitterness. You have chosen purpose over distraction. These choices may not produce immediate applause, but they produce something far more valuable: lasting peace and unwavering direction. Life has a remarkable way of revealing where our attention truly belongs. When your focus remains fixed on growth, opportunities naturally receive more of your energy than obstacles. You begin attracting people who value honesty, respect, and mutual encouragement. You create routines that strengthen your discipline rather than weaken it. You wake each morning with a clearer understanding that your future is shaped less by what happened to you and more by the choices you make today. The people who once believed they could control your emotions eventually discover that your absence from their conflict has changed everything. Their attempts to pull you backward no longer succeed because you are no longer walking the same road. They remain occupied with old battles while you continue building new possibilities. The distance between your lives grows wider with every purposeful decision you make. Without your attention, without your reactions, and without your energy to sustain their influence, they find themselves standing before the consequences of their own choices, while you continue moving toward a future defined not by the darkness you escaped, but by the light you refuse to stop pursuing.